Welcome to the Beyond the Reiki Gateway podcast with Reiki Masters Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy. This episode is sponsored in part by Mainstream Reiki, bringing Reiki further into the mainstream through education and practice. Find out more about Mainstream Reiki through a link in the show notes or on our website, beyondthereikigateway.com. And now it is time to come together and explore what lies beyond the Reiki Gateway.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Reiki Gateway. This is Kathleen Johnson, and I am here with my co-host, Andrea Kennedy. It's great to be back for our latest episode, and today we're going to be talking about the responsibility of the healers and the helpers, those people who are seekers and are drawn to do as much as possible to improve the lives and the situations of others, along with causes that are near and dear to them. This can be a difficult and sometimes thorny situation because at some point, if you continue to give and give and give, we have to face the question, where does this end? What are my responsibilities? And where does my responsibility to myself fit into all this? There's so much need out there these days, and we do have to be true to ourselves at the end of the day. We'll be sharing our thoughts about this, our experiences, some of the lessons we've learned, and hopefully help you to come to grips with how you may be able to achieve more balance in your life while helping others and helping yourself.
This is a really important topic, I think, Kathleen, because I've run into this over and over in my own life, but also students that I've had in the past with Reiki. But I do think that this applies across the board. This isn't just a Reiki topic, of course. As you said, there are so many of us out there who want to help. How many people out there don't want to leave the world in a better place than the way they found it? I think that's a pretty universal goal that many people have. They want to leave the world a better place than when they found it. And that's admirable and wonderful, but we can often be driven to a point where we don't know where the boundary is for ourselves to keep ourselves healthy and balanced while at the same time offering that help. So I am excited to explore this today with you, Kathleen.
I am too. I know this is something we've talked about before, and I think it's something that may be almost universal to all those people out there who feel that they need to help. And I think of it as being of service. For me, it started at a very young age. I think we are conditioned, if you will, to be responsible, not just for ourselves, but sometimes more responsible for others than I am to myself. But then that can lead to what we're talking about here. I'm sure we've all heard the expression, you cannot pour from an empty cup. This is so true. And honestly, that's been a very hard lesson for me, partly because of my upbringing, but also because of my nature. I have a laser focus on anyone who I think may need some help, and I want to be there for them in whatever capacity that may be. It gets very complex. These are not simple issues. It's not like I can push a button and change my behavior overnight. I've been working on it because I finally came to the realization some time ago that no, I cannot pour from an empty cup. And when my cup is empty, I am doing favors for no one, including myself. The best gift we can give anyone is to approach them from a place of being fully present and ready and able to help.
Yes, I so agree with that, Kathleen, because if you think about it, if we take care of our own needs and if we take care of ourselves being in balance and being aware and coming from that centered place like you described, then guess what? We aren't in need. If we take care of our own self, if we tend our own garden, then we come to every situation from a place of strength, from a place of calm from well, maybe not calm in every sense, but I mean energetically calm, where we might have awareness, our wits are about us. It's sort of like this. You're like, oh, I'm too busy. I'm not going to eat. I don't have time for that. You're working or you're doing something and you put off that basic need to eat. And what do they call it? Hangry or
Oh,
whatever, when
yes.
you're hungry and then you get angry. Well, then guess what? You've created a whole nother problem. So the poor people around you are like, would you just eat already? I can't stand to be around
Right.
you. That's maybe a silly example, but if we would just take care of our needs first, then we can come to a situation and make it very different, not just for ourselves, but for the other people we're interacting with. So when we come at it from that direction, I think it serves everyone. It isn't about serving me versus them or them versus me. We have to look at this as an interaction, as a partnership. And yeah, nobody else is going to feed us. We have to make those decisions for ourselves.
That's so true. And when you were speaking, the word balance kept coming to mind. This is something about which I speak rather frequently. It is a very important and essential key to wellness. You have to be in balance in order to be well and in order to grow, honestly. And if we are constantly giving and neglecting our own needs, we are completely out of balance. And it is difficult to help anyone when you're out of balance. I say very often that when we come into a human body, when we come into an incarnation, we are given the primary responsibility of taking care of ourselves. That is so important. This is something that we need to do for all the reasons we're talking about. You can't pour from that empty cup. You can't give to someone if you have nothing left to give. But honestly, the problem lies with coming to that realization and really understanding what that means, because I think so many of us are conditioned to put others first at all times. It's a very
Right.
hard habit to break. I have all kinds of obligations, and my first thought typically goes to them. Like, oh, well, what does this person need from me right now? And what does that person need? It's a trap. And as much as I love helping people, I don't like the way I feel when I get into that trap of over giving.
And I've been there too, Kathleen. And what I'll often do is I look at my day and I look at all the things I need to get done. And then I will make a plan for myself to get those things done. And where am I on the list? I'm at the bottom. When I get all that done, then I'll get to do the fun thing for myself at the end. I'm actively working on shifting that. And it is hard. It is really hard to get out of that mindset of putting all the other stuff ahead. But I think the more we become aware of that and our tendencies for that, then the easier it becomes, because then we have a whole nother thing, that awareness that helps point us in the direction. And I want to bring up something else. I want to ask your thoughts about trauma. Do you think that possibly one reason that people will put themselves last and busy themselves with everybody else's issues, do you think they don't want to look at themselves? It can be very convenient to have distraction when a person might be avoiding things that they could be working on in their own lives, or perhaps past traumas that they've had. Do you think that that's a valid reason? I mean, we've talked about upbringing and that kind of thing, but what about that? Could it actually be rooted in avoidance behavior?
I actually think that's a big part of it, because you use the word trauma, and I know that word is used a lot these days. And something I want to point out about trauma is that it doesn't have to be some big event. What is traumatic for one person may be a mere blip on the radar to someone else. Trauma is about perception. If the person experiencing this event feels traumatized, then they are. It becomes trauma for them. So trauma is tricky because it is so widespread. For some people, trauma is a huge part of their lives. And rather than face it and work to heal it and move to the other side of it, some people will instead bypass their healing by reaching out to help others. They feel good when they're working with other people, when they feel like they are making a difference. I think that's a valid point, that sometimes we just become so wrapped up in that rush of helping others and how good that makes us feel, because it does. So you want more of that. But in the meantime, you're ignoring your own healing needs. So nothing ever really changes. We are going to hit a wall, and we're going to wake up one day and go, what am I doing? I have nothing left to give. I can't even pretend to have anything to give at this point. So I think there is a very real danger of trauma entering into the picture, and how it affects what we do with others and how we fail to do things for ourselves.
I think it's also probably pretty common that people who tend to want to help and fix other people, the planet, all these causes like we're talking about, but if they have a very strong drive to make that difference externally from themselves, I'm willing to bet that they probably don't ask for help very readily either. What do you think about that?
Oh boy. I say, oh yes, oh yes. And I fit very neatly into that category. What I have learned over the years and what I have noticed in my own experience is that those who tend to be the most helpful, the most responsible people out there, attending to everyone else's needs, tend to be the people who are least likely to ask for help. And that describes me. I really, really have a problem asking for help. I will soldier through it. And I use all the tools at my disposal. I bring in Reiki, I bring in spirit, I meditate, I do what I need to do, but I really don't want to ask for help. And I know that this is not the best choice for me. It's not the healthiest choice for me. Yet those patterns are so ingrained. It's very, very hard to break free from that. So yeah, I absolutely, just speaking for myself, and I've met many other people in my lifetime and in my work that are exactly the same way. They don't want to ask for help.
I'm one of them, Kathleen. I totally am one of them. When you said I soldier through it kind of thing, I envisioned myself with a backpack on my back that was about 10 times bigger than me. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. If we want to help everybody else and all the different causes, the last thing I think we want to be is another person who needs help.
Right.
And so I think also what we're doing is we don't want to say, I'm not strong enough to help, because there's such a drive for so many people to make that difference. And I think it's so much more, this is totally the wrong word, but I'm going to use it anyway, glamorous to help others than to help yourself. I mean, to help ourselves is very under the radar and quite frankly, boring, which is another weird word to describe it. But we sit in our own stuff all the time. And I don't know about you, but I get kind of tired of sitting in my own stuff. It's like, what's going on with you? I want to help you. And there's a newness, a freshness, a new perspective maybe that we can offer other people. And to me, that's exciting. If I look at my own stuff, it's so near to us that who wants to deal with that? Let me go see your needs. I don't want to just sit in my own stuff. So I don't know. What do you think?
No, you're right. It is a lot more fun, if you will. And it goes along with what we were just talking about as kind of an avoidant type of thing. Ugh, I'm so over my stuff. It's kind of like sitting in a bathtub full of bathwater. You're sitting in this funky bathwater that's all your stuff. It's like, ew. let me get out of this bathtub
Yeah. Yeah.
and let's see, let's focus on somebody else. It's you don't want to sit
Yeah.
in your own
Yeah.
stuff anymore because it's icky and yucky and you're over it, right?
Right.
But
Yep.
there's also another part of this. There's another part, and that is not only is it, ew, I don't want to deal with this, it's also perceived as selfish to a large extent in our society,
Mm-hmm.
even though there's any number of self help books out there. Oh, take care of yourself first, all these lovely platitudes and sentiments. I think that there is still that attitude that taking care of yourself first, that's kind of selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you have someone else to think about? That idea that how
Yes.
dare you do something for yourself when there's all this need out here? And then we get into a guilt mindset.
Yeah, and when you were just talking, what that reminded me of is the Olympics and the gymnast Simone Biles, right? When she needed to take a step back for her mental health. Wow, was there a lot of judgment out there? And it was on both sides. She had so many people supporting her, but wow, I was shocked at the negativity. I think one of the issues there was she was so public. Everybody had their eyes on her, but to not give her the room to take time for herself, I just thought that was really shocking because at the end of the day, she has a life. She has her own emotions, her own balance to maintain. And who are we as the public to demand or to be so vile for her to make that decision that had to be really difficult for her? So, yeah, that just really struck a chord with me.
That's a great example. Like you, I was really taken aback by the backlash she received for, wait for it, daring to take care of herself. She was really in the midst of a mental health crisis. She had all these things going on with her that no one else knew about because we don't live in her. We don't live in her head. Yet people
Right.
still felt that they had the right to lash out at her for taking care of herself. She was expected to just, as we said, soldier on, do what she needed to do for the United States Olympics team, and don't worry about anything else. You can wait. The Olympics team is more important than you. And when she failed to live up to that, standard that she didn't even impose, boy, she really paid for that dearly. But I think she handled it beautifully. I was very, very proud of the way she did stand up for herself and didn't back down at
Mm-hmm.
all. And it really is an object lesson for all of us. This is the kind of thing we all need to do. Take the time to care for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves when it's necessary, and it's necessary every day. Self-care is not something we attend to
Mm-hmm.
once in a while if we have time and we're on our list of things to do. It's not. This is an ongoing,
Right.
critical part of our responsibility to ourselves, and it's also a critical part of our evolution and growth.
I think what can happen when we don't address our own personal well being, because that's really what it is here. It is our well being that we're either giving attention to or ignoring or undermining or whatever you want to call it. But something very common, I think, happens with people is resentment. They'll go on, they'll soldier through whatever it is, put themselves at the end of the list, like I sometimes do, as I explained. But what will happen, I know with myself, is I'll begin to resent other people. And that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be that person. And so, what do we do with resentment? We keep it in ourselves, we swallow that. And you and I both know emotions swallowed or buried, they really don't go away. And that just tends to lead to more problems for the individual. So, it's really an illusion that when we don't take care of ourselves that we're really helping others, because we're really not. because then we're in a situation where we're not even being our true selves. We're dealing with these other emotions and resentments and whatever else. And we're just denying that to go forward. And that's no gift to anyone.
Exactly, because when we approach someone from that place, we are inauthentic. And how can we even hope
Right.
to help someone truly from a place of inauthenticity? We just can't. If we really want to help someone, we have to be fully present and able to help them without resentment, without anything hanging around in our own healing needs that imposes upon theirs. And what you said about resentment is perfect, because we do. We get, oh, not this again. And you do get resentful. And then what happens with resentful? Then you feel guilty about feeling resentful, right? It's like, oh, well, he or she needs
Mm-hmm.
me, or
Yep.
this or that situation needs me. I must be a terrible person because I feel resentful. So there you have that
Mm-hmm.
guilt. And we then kind of
Yep.
push that aside and say, we just soldier on
Yep.
doing what we do. And what happens to
Mm-hmm.
resentment and anger when it's stuffed? We turn it in on ourselves. And then what happens? Depression. We get depressed
Yep.
because depression is nothing more than anger turned inward. And that can all
Mm-hmm.
be avoided if we just start taking care of ourselves before offering to help others. It sounds so simple, and I don't mean to imply that it is,
I know.
because we are, most of us, probably many of whom are listening to this, are conditioned to be other focused and to put themselves last. I like what you said about the list, the daily list. I'm a big list maker myself. Some days I don't even make it onto the list.
Right.
But I have been making a
Right.
concerted effort to take care of myself in more ways, I would say, in the past couple of years. And you made a very good point earlier when you said when we become aware of it, that is a huge, huge step, because we really can't fix anything about ourselves if we're unaware of it, right?
Right. And that's really why I brought up the whole word trauma and that whole subject, because what I tend to do is I go through life and I'm constantly asking myself, why did I say this? Or why did I behave this way? What am I feeling right now? And it's, people might think how exhausting, but that's just really how I am. I'm always sort of taking temperature or observing, I guess I would say, how I'm reacting, what I'm doing, so that I can assess what are my motivations in this. And that's, I guess, really why I wanted to bring it to the surface, because if we notice how we're behaving and then we dive deeper into that, well, why am I at the last of the list? Why did I say this to that person? Or what drives me to help all these other people? I would just like to invite us to more easily investigate where we're coming from in our lives, because if in fact we are doing this to avoid our own issues, oh, please, please let this be the opportunity to find that path that leads back to yourself so that you can address these things. There is so much opportunity, so much richness in doing that, because when you were talking earlier about when we're not in balance and come to a situation, right? How that plays out. I was thinking in my mind, but if we spend time on our own well being and we address our needs, that's an act of self love. And when we are in self love and then we go into a situation, when we come to it from that place of love, true authenticity, wow, we elevate the entire interaction. And I think what goes unnoticed with people is that helping is often just being and doesn't have anything to do with doing. And that concept has been coming up more recently, I think, as a thing. And what we call it is holding space, right?
Yes.
And so when we hold space for another person, it isn't that we're not fixing their problem, we're not tinkering, we're not actively saying, do this, do that. When we hold space, it's an act of being in a vibration that's really rooted in love, in caring, and not needing a situation to look one way or another, not needing to fix their problem A or B or whatever it is, but often just being in a balanced, neutral space. I mean, you don't even have to be loving, but just neutral and calm and balanced within ourselves. Guess what? That translates into our aura. It translates into our energy. And so then to be present with another person is in itself healing without us even having to do a thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I absolutely agree with that. And even in my work with clients, this happens so frequently. It's not like I'm spewing pearls of wisdom. I do occasionally, but it's not that. Most of the time, I have found people just want to have a safe space. They want to be held in that space of what I call loving kindness by someone who hears them. People want to be heard. We are so frequently unheard these days. Everything moves at such a rapid pace. There's always new information, new things on the horizon, new developments. We don't take the time to listen. And when we take the time to hold the space for someone and truly hear them and approach that from a space of loving kindness, in many cases, that's all that's really needed. It helps them to get in touch with how they're feeling, and it helps them to work on their own issues without us, as you said, having to really do anything. Because, well, we know that we really can't fix anyone, right? That is not our responsibility. The only individual we can fix are ourselves. We have that responsibility to ourselves. But we can't fix anyone else. That's their responsibility. What we can do, though, is hold that space. Especially in the past few years, I have found that sometimes that is the most powerful thing I can do for anyone because it's rare. Sadly, it's rare. I think it's something that really needs to be done more often because we all want to be heard. We all want to be acknowledged. It's a basic human need. And when we do, when we feel like we're heard, then it gives us that space and we can say, okay, now that I've said all this and now that I've had it reframed for myself a bit, I think I can move forward with this issue, whatever it may be. But, so we have to give the people we work with that opportunity to be heard.
So very true. And often they have the answers within them, but through the turbulence of their emotion and, whatever it might be, they're not aware of what their next step might be or what the solution is. But by holding space, by giving them room, and by listening to them, as you said, they can clear the deck, so to speak, and with clarity, often know exactly what it is that they need to do. They couldn't hear or feel that solution until that time. Just to point this out, the investment of taking care of yourself and getting clear and balanced to be able to hold space, that's amazingly simple. You don't have to be a specialist in any sort of modality or, have certain skills or anything else to hold space. And therefore, we're all capable of that.
What you just said about the person is not able to think through the emotions or the confusion they may be experiencing. What they're doing is they're sitting in their bathwater, to use that analogy I used a little while ago, and they don't know what to do with that. So by just holding that space and allowing them to speak and they can often figure it out for themselves. I have had conversations in the past couple weeks with people who feel stuck. They don't know what to do. And at the end of a conversation, they'll be, oh, this has helped me so much. And I'm thinking, I didn't really do anything. I might have said a few
Hmm.
encouraging words, but what I was doing, I was actively holding space. I was fully present for that person,
Hmm.
and I was in that space of loving kindness and compassion for another human being. And that honestly sometimes is all that's required.
Right. If you think about it, Kathleen, who are we to say we have the answers for anybody? They've got to make the choices themselves. They're the ones who have the perspective, if they can get down to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without the distractions, as we said. But if that way to that inner knowing is supported by the other person, that is where the true change happens. It isn't about us changing their bathwater for them.
No.
It's about them kind of realizing this is icky and I want clean water now. What
Right.
do I have to do to get clean water? That's where the change happens. And it goes back to that thing that you said a minute ago. It's like we can't fix anybody. They have to make those decisions themselves. And I think if we are honest with ourselves and remind ourselves of that, it helps lower the whole expectations that we even have on ourselves because we go, oh, yeah, I can't fix you. And yeah, it isn't my job to fix you. And I'm going to let that go. I think for the person who wants to help so much, accepting that fact can be transformative.
Exactly. People will sometimes say to me, oh, this has helped me so much, as I mentioned earlier. I am always very quick to say, yes, but you're doing the heavy lifting. They're the ones who are doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
not me. Like you said, we're not laying out an action plan. That's not what this is about. It's about giving them the the empowerment and the confidence to realize that they have the answers. They just need to be able to wade through all the dirty bathwater and find it, right?
Yeah,
But I'm always quick to
right.
say, no, no, I didn't really do that much. You did the heavy lifting and you continue to do the heavy lifting. And it's the people who really commit to making the changes in their lives and do what they know needs to be done that really do make the biggest changes in their lives. Now, with my assistance or your assistance or someone else's assistance, sure, we all need support and we all need help. There's no question about that. But we can't fix them and we can't tell them what to do. But more often than not, they know what to do after they've had a chance to really talk it through and go, oh, yeah, this has really been helpful. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling, and it makes me feel such joy when a client gets to that point and says, oh my goodness, it's that light bulb moment, right? And I think that then brings us
Mm-hmm.
back
Yep.
to the need to take care of ourselves, because if we're doing all this holding space for others, which we do, we need to hold space for ourselves. We really, really do.
Yes.
In whatever way that works for us.
Yes. Because how can we be calm for them? How can we not have our own agenda or our own clarity in that moment if we are really in need of self care or balance or whatever you want to call it? And I want to bring something else up, Kathleen, because a lot of us, we're just overwhelmed right now, especially there's so many different things that need help out there, situations, the planet, of course, so many different causes, so many different avenues that we might help. And every time there's a natural disaster, which we've had many of them lately, and that goes all around the world. I know for myself as a Reiki person, it's like, okay, I could offer Reiki to that. I could offer Reiki to this and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And for those of us who do practice Reiki, or perhaps it's another modality which gives us skills and tools to help, I think we can feel at times burdened that, well, gosh, I could wake up in the morning and I could use these skills to help the world, the planet, this person, that person, whoever it is. But there's never a shortage, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's never a shortage of who or what we might offer help to. And the question becomes, how do we set the boundary? Because I know for myself, especially when I teach Reiki classes and the students learn all of these tools and techniques, I mean, you could Reiki from the moment you wake up in the morning through your entire day until you go to bed at night. And I have had students too that think, oh my goodness, and overwhelm happens because I want to do all of these techniques. I want to help all these people and causes, but I could do it every second of every day and it would be never ending. How do you work with that, Kathleen? I would be curious to get your thoughts on that.
That's a great point because I think that's something that many of us who work in the healing and helping professions, encounter. There is an overwhelming need. And like you said, every day when you wake up, the same issues and situations that were present the day before are still there, along with a few new others. I mean, it never ends. It truly never ends. And I think this is where the power of no comes into play, truly. And that may sound a bit jarring, but we have to take care of ourselves. We are energetic beings, so it's just logical that we have to take care of our energy to be well. To me, it's completely reasonable. Mm-hmm. This is something I probably said 1,000 times. We have to take care of our energy. Mm-hmm. And there's no way that any one of us has the capacity to deal with all of the issues that land in our laps every day. Remember, we can't fix anyone. So I think the power of no is super important. You might have heard the saying, no is a complete sentence. It's true. And I think this becomes especially critical for people who are drawn to helping and working with others because we do tend to take on the burdens of the world. There comes a point, and I touched on this earlier, where we realize we can't do it. We cannot do it all. I hit that wall, I would say, about 3 years ago. I knew when I hit it, it was unmistakable. And that's when I found the courage to start saying no. I still don't say it often enough, I think anyway, but I'm working on it. I also think it bears noting that when we say no, we don't need to give an explanation. No is a complete sentence.
Right.
This all goes into the concept of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our energy. And also, as an empath and intuitive, a lot of the news, I would say 99% of the news these days, creates so much anxiety within me. I can just feel the energies of all this, turmoil and trauma and drama. I don't want to feel that way because I can't function optimally when I'm, walking around with all this stuff. So I need to say no, not just to other people. I need to say no to watching a lot of the news. I need to cut way back on the news. I need to do many things in order to protect my energy. Because I think as we move forward in this regard as helpers and healers, we need to be more and more discerning at all times about what we allow into our energy field, because it's important. When we let in everything, we become these big sponges just taking it all in. Is that healthy? Absolutely not. And if you tend to be intuitive or empathic or highly sensitive, it is hard to release. It can be done, but you walk around with that stuff a lot longer than you need to. So saying no to external events, saying no to people who really don't, saying no to people who may not be in alignment with who you are and where you want to be. There is nothing wrong with that. That is an act of self-care. It is an act of self-love. Very important, as you said. And it is part of our primary responsibility to ourselves.
Yes. I also think that sometimes when we say no, that's a gift. And it isn't just a gift for ourselves. it's really a gift for them too. Because when we say no, then perhaps they shift their perspective or they find another resource or whatever that might be. But, I think we tend to convince ourselves that yes is the best answer and that when we say no, it's somehow less than. But it really can be a gift for them because perhaps the next person they ask has a much better solution than we could have offered. I
Right.
mean, who are we to think that
Right.
us saying yes is the best thing? I think that is important, at least for me. Give somebody else an opportunity to help,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Maybe they're better at it. The other thing, too, is with all the different causes out there, in a session with a client, probably about a year ago, it came through very clearly. And it was that we're on the planet with how many billions of other people? Saving the planet, saving the whales, saving this, that, and the next thing. It isn't all on one person. And there are, I don't know, thousands and thousands of causes. As one person, you cannot support all of it. So, my advice is pick what really just gets your heart's attention and give well and give emotionally connected energy to that.
Hmm.
Create that meaningful connection. And you know what else? Relax your grip on everything else because let some of those other billions of people resonate with those other causes
Right.
because we are in a community here on the planet. This is a community. And so we don't have to carry everything. And if other people step up or they don't, that isn't our responsibility either. All we can do is follow what we can do, make our own choices, and at the end of the day, be okay with that. And if other people step up or not, that's up to them.
Right. I agree.
We just really need to let go of a lot.
We do, especially again, like these days are challenging to say the least, and we do need to be able to say no and let go of it from there. I read an article recently that I thought had a really interesting point. It was about saying no, but it was about disappointing the right people. As a
Mm,
healer, as an empath, as an intuitive, whatever, you don't want to say no. You don't want to disappoint everyone. You don't want to disappoint anyone. But this is not healthy. So I read this article and it was very eye-opening. It said it comes down to disappointing the right people. I thought that is so true. And I think that is something to really consider because we are going to disappoint someone somewhere along the line. We can't please everyone. It's impossible. We make a conscious choice as
mm-hmm,
to the
mm-hmm.
energy we are going to expend or the energy we allow into our fields. Yes, we will be disappointing people, but make sure it's the right people. And it's not a callous way of looking at things. Again, it is just about being true to yourself, taking care of yourself. At the end of the day, being comfortable with the choices you've made, not feeling any resentment about being used or taken advantage of, and knowing that you did the best you could for others and even more importantly for yourself. Because tomorrow's another day. And when you wake up feeling that, okay, my cup is full, then you can approach that with the sense that you have something to offer as opposed to, oh my God, it's another day. What am I going to do? No, that's, you can't help anybody that way.
Right.
So I guess the takeaway is take care of yourself. It is super important. In fact, I can't think of anything more important. And I know it's a tough lesson, probably for most of
Right.
you listening, but I hope it's a good takeaway for you as well.
Yes. I think this is a good message for us to hear. Really, I do, Kathleen. I know for myself, I have awareness about this already, and it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle. I hope our listeners can feel that we care about them and want them to take care of themselves. And by doing so, we just create a more caring community because the love, the care, it starts within ourselves. And when we foster that, then it exudes out into everything that we do. And the actions that we do decide are worthy of our attention, then we're present and we're balanced.
Hmm.
And we can help in so many more ways than perhaps we have been when we come at it from a place more about duty instead of service. So I do hope that it's been helpful.
I do too.
Before the episode comes to an end, Kathleen, I would really love to share some practical advice, some ideas for the listeners to consider about self care. Maybe a couple of light bulbs have gone off for people and they're ready to devote more of their time to some self care. Do you have any suggestions as to how people might address that?
I actually do. I have been engaging much more in self care and self love in the past, I'd say 2 to 3 years. And I have found some things that work really well for me. And some of these are really easy to implement. And I think they make a big difference. And remember, it's about taking care of your energy and what you allow into your energy field. One of the things I have found to be most helpful about filling that empty cup is spending some time in nature. Oh my goodness, that is so restorative. So restorative. Just being outside, even if you live in a city, go to a park or some place where you can just be around nature and everything she offers for a short time. Even when the weather is kind of unforgiving, just appreciate everything she does. Studies have shown that spending time in nature is wonderful for our mental well-being, and I believe it. So that's something you can do. Spending time with animals.
Right.
Animals is very restorative. Animals have a way of just making everything better. If you have pets, spend a little more time with them, not just limited to the caretaking duties, but spend some time with them. See how that works out. And for me, I've implemented a couple other things that I do regularly. I take time to walk every day, whether it's even for 20 minutes or a half an hour, frequently while listening to a podcast. But that helps me in so many ways because I'm able to get some exercise in, even if I'm just walking in my house when there's bad weather. I walk every single day. That's been very helpful, and it's easy. You don't need any special equipment. So walk, exercise, move your body is what I'm trying to say. Move your body. Bodies want to move. They want to be used. They want to be active. So move your body. Even a little bit helps tremendously improve your mood. I've also started meditating very briefly prior to working with a client. I've only started that in the past couple weeks, so this isn't anything that I can congratulate myself for doing long term. And I'm pretty sure Spirit guided me to do this. This wasn't me. I have found that to be wonderfully helpful. And when I say briefly, I'm talking maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 if I have the time. Very briefly, I simply sit and empty my mind as best as I can. And what I will often do is say, what do I need to know right now? I'll just say that silently and just allow whatever needs to come in, come in. And whether or not I get a clear or distinct answer is really immaterial. I have found that my sessions flow incredibly smoothly. I get more information because I'm opening myself up to that universal energy and allowing whatever I need to know to come in. I have found that to be really helpful.
Oh, nice.
And one other thing, I am now taking a course. I'm a student again. I'm taking a course on a subject that's near and dear to me, and I would encourage anyone who is interested to do the same. If you have an interest, a passion about something, or curious about a certain topic, take a course in it. Right. It doesn't have to be anything related to healing or helping. Just do it. It's something you're doing for yourself, and it feels so good. So that's some of the things I do. And Andrea, I'm sure you have some suggestions as well.
Yes, I do. Those were wonderful, Kathleen. Well, being a Reiki person, I'm pretty sure you agree, but self Reiki, of course, for some self care.
Of course.
We do that daily. But aside from that, what I find really works for me, it's like my litmus test as far as does this qualify as self care? I tend to always feel better when I have an injection of something else, an interrupter. So that might be the walking, like getting up and just leaving my Reiki studio because I'm in my home now, but just getting out of the space.
Right.
So putting myself in a different situation, different energy. It might be outside. It might be flipping on the TV and watching 5 minutes of just something that's random. And that might seem weird for self care, but what it does is it gets my brain shifted into another place. Another one I do is I write a lot. And again, that helps my flow of my brain, like get things out, and I feel better. Your meditation of what's important for me to know, I do the same thing. Except I'm writing my answers, but it's very meditative. What else do I do? Oh, my dog, Frida, spend time with her. Like you said, we have a river behind our house. And so I'll walk down there. That takes in the nature and again gets me out of my space. So all of those little things like that. And I'm also taking a class myself and delving deeper into some things that interest me. And again, you see, it's an injection of a different energy. And to me,
Exactly.
that's the common denominator that I have found that helps me. I think that has something to do with sort of resetting me. And so that's what I would say about self care. It doesn't have to be airy fairy, it doesn't have to be fancy, but just really taking those breaks.
Yeah, the injection of a different energy. I like that. That's so true. And I think that is the common denominator that runs through all the suggestions that we made and the things that we implement in our lives. Because I also write, as you know, and there are times when I feel like the top of my head is going to pop off if I sit there any
Yes.
longer and try to write something. So it's then,
Hmm.
okay, I'm getting up. I may go into the kitchen and make some food because for me, I just love puttering around in the kitchen and creating new foods and just doing that kind of thing. That's something else that really feeds my soul, so to speak, and my
Hmm.
body. But it's
Oh,
fun for
yeah.
me. So, yeah, it's just that injection of different energy because you get so caught up in everything that you need to do that you just got to step away from it and do something that your soul is going, yes, please do something different. Please do something different. We need to make a change at this point. And
Hmm.
that's all it is. Whatever that may be for you, it doesn't have to be any of the suggestions we offered. Whatever makes your soul sing, whatever makes you feel good about yourself, and not having to do with anybody else but you. It's all
Right.
about you. That self care doesn't have to be directed toward anyone but you. That's the most important part. And I think when we start practicing that every day, we can feel a difference. I have much more energy to give to the people with whom I work. And when we do meet, I approach that with a sense of anticipation and joy and gratitude. Self care
Hmm.
is vitally important. And I think we've probably made our point in that regard.
Right.
But I really hope that you all will take this to heart and maybe make some changes in your own lives that can help you become a better healer, helper, and seeker as we address all the issues that need to be addressed in this day and age.
And finally, Kathleen, I just like to mention one other thing. I believe with many of us, we hold ourselves to such a high standard, wanting to help bring more light in. And I just want to assure our listeners they are doing a brilliant, brilliant job at it and let themselves off the hook for not being able to fix everything. It's not our responsibility. We need to forgive ourselves as readily as we often forgive everyone else. And with that, we hope that we have inspired you, supported you, and helped you. We thank you for listening. We thank you again for joining us. And of course, we invite you to join us next time as we journey beyond the Reiki Gateway with Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy.